Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dustin Kircher. I got my partner here, Ben Dreicer. We're with MHP Nation. Thanks for joining us today. We have Jeff Flynn on the show, who was recommended to us by Eden Markowitz at what's the name of the company, Ben?
Madison specs.
Madison Specs. There we go. And he said we should talk to Jeff and have him on the show. So Jeff is he was in the Navy, so thank you for your service, Jeff. And he left that 2022 to pursue mobile home park investing full time. And since then, he's is up to 8 mobile home parks in the Alabama market. So Jeff, thanks for coming on the show. Love to hear your story and see what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know I had a little brief intro about you, but what got you into the mobile home park space while you were in the Navy, right?
Yeah, pretty close to right when I got out. It was literally I got out on a Friday, and my first closing was that Monday.
Mhm.
So I was under contract while I was in, but I was out a few days early.
That's that's crazy timing.
It is. It was. If anybody's listening is a veteran, like when you get ready to check out, you have to talk to every single person in your chain of command, most of whom you've never spoken to before.
Hmm.
And the whole process is basically to talk you out of getting out. They're going to listen to what your plan is, and they're like, I don't know if that's going to work. Maybe you should just think about re-enlisting. It's this whole big game, and I
Yeah.
just had a blast with it. People were asking me what I was doing. I was like, well, I'm moving to Alabama, and I'm putting all my money into trailer parks. Like they had like general like actual anxiety for me. Like you really need to rethink that. And I always made it sound a lot worse than it was. I did have a really good plan, but I had a blast doing it.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, it's always especially when no one's like used to it, hearing that you're investing in mobile home parks, everybody's like, huh? You can actually do
Yeah,
that? One, can you do that? And two, why would you do that? You know?
yeah, exactly. So my before I joined, I went to Auburn University, and so I was actually in one of the greatest like mobile home park markets in the country, and maybe not greatest, but one of the most unique, right? Like there's a lot of um, parks there that are completely student uh, occupied, right? You have to have active, enrollment in the university to live in that mobile home park. And when you
Mm.
graduate, they kick you out. It's
Oh
wild.
wow. Yeah.
Um, and I had a lot of friends in mobile home parks at the time, and I just never once thought about like dude, who owns this, who's making the money. I didn't know what I was thinking, but it never crossed my mind. And fast forward a few years when I was first stationed in Denver, the first couple months there was right around the time COVID was happening.
Mm.
And it was a really weird situation where I got there. I was getting ready to get started on my job. My job required a top secret clearance. So I had to go and interview or get interviewed by several different people. And those people I was set to interview with were deemed non essential. And so they weren't allowed to come in.
Mm.
Uh, and so it's this weird situation where I got out here and they pretty much said, "Hey, stay at home. Just text us in the morning that you're alive." And that went on for about 4 months. And to me, it was the first like experience of financial freedom in my life because it was eye opening. It's like, man, I'm not making hardly any money at all, but everything I need is covered. And I have
Yeah.
time to go do whatever I want. So like me and my friend went skiing. We climbed 12, 14,000 foot peaks. Like
Nice.
we were just having a blast. And it just totally switched my mindset to be like, okay, I have got to figure out a way to build this up so that when I get out of the military and I don't need a job, I can just do this continuously. So that's what really got me started on the path of passive income. I wish I would have found real estate first, but I didn't. I got into options trading and
Mm.
completely lost a ton of
Yeah.
money doing that. Just like everybody tells you, you can't beat the market. Of course, I know better, so I'm going to do it. And then I was proven wrong. Um, but while I was doing that, I was just reading as much about real estate as I could. So I got started with house hacking, right? I had a pretty unique
Okay.
advantage that as a veteran, I could just use a VA loan and
Yeah.
get into a property with nothing out of pocket. And
Yep.
at the time, the interest rates were really low, so stuff made sense. And my first real estate purchase was a 1 bedroom condo. There was a loft upstairs. I lived in that, and I rented out the master bedroom to a friend of mine, and it more or less covered my mortgage. So it was good, but it was in a really, really bad area. And so that was my first lesson to sometimes you got to pay up, right?
Yep.
But just kept doing that. And around that time, a friend of mine had started a real estate brokerage that just sold mobile home parks.
Mm,
And so I had the opportunity to go work with them. And so that's what I did. And I got started as a broker.
nice. What broker's firm did you work with?
It was Delta Group at the time, and then it became MHP brokerage. So I was
Okay.
there for about 2 years. And then I ultimately left like when the rates got really high really quick.
Yeah.
Kind of in this weird situation where I was kind of, half broker, half buyer. And I was like, I got to pick one or the other because it's
Yeah.
really hard to get anything done right now. So that's what I
Yeah.
did.
Nice. And as we mentioned earlier, so you were buying, was your first park in Georgia? Or I'm sorry, Alabama?
First park was in Alabama, right? It wasn't an area I was near, right? I was all the way across the country in Colorado, and this one was in
Mm-hmm.
Tallahassee, Alabama, really small town. But it was just one of those things where it's like, hey, I knew somebody who lived there. It's a relatively small market. If you didn't know anything about it, it might not be like seem like a great place. But I had a really good friend of mine who lived there, and I knew Alabama, right? That was great.
Oh,
Um,
did it
so
freeze
that's
up?
how that's the first one I ended up closing on. Yeah, just a
Oh,
second there.
sorry.
You
Yeah,
froze up a little bit in that
Oh,
last.
it's all right. We can cut it out or, that's why we don't do them live anymore.
that's right.
Um,
Can you talk to us about that first deal a little bit? What was the size? Was it creative finance? How did you get the money to do the deal? What was that experience?
So the first deal we did was it was myself and a partner, and then we had another guy who partnered with us who had a lot of experience. He had several parks coming into it. I obviously wasn't going to qualify for any sort of commercial loan, regardless of the size, because I wasn't making that much. Um, so that's kind of how we got the financing lined up. But it was a just a typical off-market deal, and I couldn't find the guy's info from tax records, so I just was on Google Maps, saw the street view with the park's number,
mhm.
called. It was the owner, of course, right? He doesn't have any for him. So I just got the conversation started, and over a couple of months, I negotiated and got the first one going.
Nice. Very cool. And how many spaces was that one?
It was 34 lots at the
Okay.
time. I want to say like 29 of them were occupied, and then there was about 8 or 9 park owned homes. So
Okay.
it was a I wish it would have been all tenant owned homes for the first one, right? But it wasn't. But it was the numbers made sense. It was only like 600 grand, and at the time, I was still kind of thinking about real estate in Denver, maybe, and I couldn't get a duplex here for that. So I was like, okay,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna make this work, right?
Nice. And so with the other seven, so that was your first one, and you have seven others. Are they kind of all in the general area? Where's your main focus at nowadays?
7 of them are in general area. There's one in Mississippi.
Okay.
I'm pretty uninvolved in that. That was basically like a joint venture
Mm,
with somebody else. And but the 7 that I have in Alabama are all in a pretty concise. You could probably go about hour and a half from one to the furthest from it.
okay, nice. And how many spaces in total are you managing now?
250.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And are they you mentioned that you like the TOH. Are they all TOH or is there still some POH in there?
Well, I should have known better, but when I was a broker, I always had deals I came across that were all park-owned homes, and I couldn't find buyers for them. And it used to just drive me nuts because I would look at the numbers and I'd be like, man, these guys, someone out there has to love these. And that first one wasn't, but we quickly did some others that were all park-owned homes like a couple months after that.
Yep.
It had to be like maybe like 2 weeks, and I realized like, man, I don't want to do that again. I really don't want to do that again. It's just the the management and like the time I think of dealing with park owned homes is what just it wasn't passive in any capacity. It was very
Hmm.
competitive, and I just as soon as I started realizing how much time I was spending on it, I was like, I got to switch this up. This is not going to work.
Got it.
And then with those park-owned homes, Was it were you always trying to convert them into TOH, or are you just talking about the management of a park-owned home is too intensive for you, or the process of turning so many homes
It
into
was it was kind of a combination, right? Like so we had a few deals where our strategy was we were going to infill with used lots with used homes, and we were going to rent them, rehab them and rent them out. And so we were actively buying these park owned homes just as a way to infill quickly. And it would go okay, but the problem would be like you could spend probably $20,000 and get a completely renovated home on your lot. And if you could rent it for 750, it seems like a really, really good deal, but they get torn up like 8 months later. The people are moving out without telling you, and you can't track them down, and then you got to send people out there. It's just the headache of it was a ton. And then just when we sat down and figured, hey, we're putting all this cash into these homes, that could have bought us another deal, like without a question. So that's where it just came down to like we were trying to get parks filled quickly. And I think we just switched to the mindset of like, let's just make sure it's cash flowing and then just market it really well and see if we can get people in there organically. And we've had a lot of success with that.
Nice. So when you say organically, like people bringing in their own units on the infill. Got it. So you're not actively out there buying new deals through like 21st Mortgage and or whatnot and placing homes. Oh, I think it froze up again. There we go.
Right, exactly. So it's basically just oh dang. It was basically, yeah, like you said, it's just a way of marketing. We've had a lot of success actually just giving tenants referrals of like, hey, if you find somebody who wants to move their home into the park, we'll pay you $1,000.
That's awesome. Yeah.
They in these small towns, man, that word travels very quickly, and we've paid that out several times, and we're glad to do it. Right, the tenants are super happy, and it's usually the tenants we like, right? And so there's a pretty good chance. I mean, obviously we're going to check and screen them, but there's a pretty good chance they're going to refer someone that they like too, which means they're probably similar, and we get good tenants in there.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, the return on investment for $1,000 to get somebody in there, for 10 years plus, probably, because most of the time people are not moving their homes out of the park. That's a great way of that's genius. So the parks that you own, the other or all I guess, it sounds like they might be in smaller towns. What is that? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there's smaller markets. Which was kind of a part of my thesis, right? Basically, when I got into buying, I was trying to buy the parks that I could not find buyers for as a broker, which obviously
Okay.
there's some inherent like risks to that like it's probably not as high of a demand park. But I also saw deals where people had put together a portfolio of 4 or 5 properties in a condensed area, and it might not trade as if it was one lot or one park, but it traded higher than those individual ones. So that was kind of the general idea. In retrospect, I don't think it's that much easier to manage a property if you have another one close by, right? I mean, most of our management's remote anyways, but at least I think still to an end buyer, I think it has a lot of value.
Yeah, exactly. And are you looking at certain utility structures, or is it city sewer, city water, or does it matter to you?
Either way's fine, really. I think if the deal has vacancy, I prefer honestly being in just a county, right? I don't really like dealing with the cities on bringing homes in, right? Like one of the cities I own in, the city has this ordinance that you cannot bring a mobile home into the city, right? And I have gone to the courthouse and met with them and the building inspector and found the part of the code that allows our park to do that. But it doesn't matter because every time I call them, I've got to explain to that clerk, and then they got to go to their boss. It's just in it. By the time that happens, the person's gone. They're going to somewhere else, or they found their own land. But it's not extremely difficult, but it's a little bit more of a headache. Whereas in the county, like right outside of city limits, where they're still close to a lot of this stuff, you can get it filled in a day, right? There's nothing real to do.
Nice. And so with your current business right now with A Parks, what's your team look like? What's your business looking like right now?
Well, until probably 4 months ago, it was self-managed by myself and one lady who was local, and that was
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, that was that was a lot. It happened kind of slowly, but soon I kind of like woke up and I was like, man, I'm spending half my day just managing these properties, right? And there was a big lull, and like I hadn't found any new deals because that's all I was doing was putting out fires.
Yeah.
Um, it was also a manager who had been on one of the properties when we bought it, and she did fine. But I think in retrospect, what we're doing when we're buying these properties mostly is fixing how they're managed. So we shouldn't be keeping anybody who was a manager there to begin with, right? So at this point, it's basically myself and a VA, and we go through all of it. And then I have a really trusted on-site maintenance guy who does weekly scans with 360 cameras to send us pictures
Oh, nice.
pictures of the park, so we can kind of keep an eye on grass, people's decks, skirting, that sort of stuff.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, that's quite a bit. 8 parks, you by yourself. And were you did you convert all these over to TOH right now, or are they still some POH mixed in there?
There's one park where, to be honest, we just overpaid, and so we're just letting it be park owned home. Well, I mean, it is more cash flow. Like that is true, but it is way more work. But we're just kind of letting some of the bleed itself off. The rest of them are RTOs at this point.
Got it.
That has been incredible. The amount of maintenance that just drops, right? Like for a while, I was starting to second guess myself and think, man, maybe mobile home parks are not the right investment.
Hmm.
And then it was really just those homes. Once that went away, it was perfect. I couldn't ask for better.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it makes them much more labor intensive when you have to do the management of the homes as well, too.
Yeah. I think what it is a lot of times is it's the local guy who's got one park, or maybe he has some other rentals, and he's set up. He's a maintenance guy himself, and he'll go out there and he won't charge anything, and he doesn't mind doing it. And for that guy, it's perfect. But if you're trying to get multiple of these done and you're looking at the value of the park, it doesn't matter how many homes you have, it's not going to change the value. So it's better off. You're better off just making it easy and move on to the next one, I think.
Yeah. And how does your acquisitions look right now? Is that your focus? Are you talking to brokers, off market deals?
It's still pretty much my focus. As a broker, I mean, every park that we've got was self-sourced. Not one has been a broker or a wholesaler, but I was a broker, so it's kind of like it's the only way I knew how to do it. I didn't know how to talk to other brokers. I'm trying to change that now because I'm not a broker anymore, and I'm seeing other people who are doing, dozens of deals, and they're not cold calling, they're not going out and finding, they're just people are bringing them. So I'm trying to get better at that and just trying to reach out to more brokers just to make my life a little easier and focus on the capital raising side, which is kind of what takes up most of my time now. But I kind of feel like where the market is now is really good deals still pencil, but most of them, like, they look good because I'm still thinking like, man, 2 years ago, I would have totally bought this. And now I'm sitting at, can't pay that. Right. And there's a lot of sellers I'm still in touch with. I've been talking to for 2+ years, and it's like, I'm sending an offer 50% of less than what I used to. Right. And they think I'm just trying to be, heard about it. Look, I can't. This is what it is.
And so if you're doing direct to seller stuff, I'm guessing it's cold calling, right? You're just picking up the phone, talking to the sellers or reaching out to them. Are you able to, are you doing seller finance deals, or is it all traditional banking?
I did a few seller finance deals. I'd say 3 of them were totally seller finance, and 1 involved some seller financing. But yeah, it's more of, right now it's more bank financing, right? Because a lot of these sellers like, look, I just want to cash out, and I'm really trying to find seller finance deals, but for whatever reason lately, I haven't come across any.
Yeah. Is there a certain bank that you like to work with that you've been doing some financing with?
Yeah, there's a local bank that I love working with.
Yeah.
And
Awesome.
there are also some local banks I can't stand working with. I would say the most stress I've had getting to this point is getting deals financed. It's been so tough. My biggest drawback, like, a lot of my purchases have been less than $1 million in terms of a loan amount, and you're pretty much going to have to use local lenders at that point.
Yeah.
And it's been difficult, but finally starting to get to the point where, hey, the person who trusted me on that first deal is now seeing it's working out. I've never missed
Hmm.
a payment. Might be one of their highest debt service coverage ratios they got. And so now it's like, okay, let's work with you on a second. So their local banks definitely require a lot of face to face and like trust, and they want to have, faith that you know what you're doing. And that's kind of
Yeah.
hard when you've never done it. Right. So it was definitely a challenge in the beginning.
So was it more of just the experience that you felt like is been the difficult side of obtaining financing?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's also the same stigma most people have about mobile home parks. I think bankers absolutely do too,
Mm,
right? If they're a local bank, I'm sure I'm probably one of the first people to ever come into their doors asking for financing on a mobile home park. Like,
yeah.
um, they just don't see a lot. Most of what they do is local mortgages, local businesses, car loans, simple stuff. Like they do some commercial loans, but it's an uphill battle. And the other thing I've really learned that helps is to come in there with numbers that show how conservative I'm being. Like
Hmm.
in the beginning, I didn't really understand that bankers are just naturally insanely pessimistic, and like they don't share in your upside at all. So they don't care if it's worth 3 times what I'm paying for it. If I give them one scenario where I could potentially lose them money, they're going to ask me a million questions on it. So my whole pitch now is like, hey, I'm giving the investors one thing. It's the same thing, but when I go to the bankers, it's like, hey, we could go to 70% occupancy and we're still going to cash flow. We can go to 60, like, that kind of number. So they look at that and say, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Where in Alabama are you?
What was that?
You're in Alabama, correct? As
I live
well?
in Denver now, but I still invest. I was local till about 5 months ago. So
Ah,
all 2 of those deals were bought while I was local.
nice.
Where
Uh,
about?
So they're in central Alabama. So I lived in Auburn. So none of the parks I own are in Auburn, but if you drew a radius of like 2 hours around that, that's where they all lie in that sort of range.
okay. I'm trying to think, where's Auburn? That's central?
It's central and it's eastern, so it's about
Okay.
an hour and a half from Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Nice.
We were
Yeah.
looking at a park. That's how our first get together and the first time we met in person was us doing DD on a park in Alabama, just outside Birmingham, like Jefferson, like right next to Jefferson, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not
RV park though.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, the closest I am to Birmingham would be Sylacauga, which is probably 45 minutes from there, but it's
Mm,
close.
yeah. So you just moved to Denver. Why Denver? Why'd you go back?
Well, I had been stationed here before,
Hmm.
um, and this is where I met my wife. And
Okay.
it's hard enough to talk a bank into lending you money on a mobile home park. It's really hard to talk your wife from Denver into moving to Alabama to buy mobile home parks. And she humored me, and it was super helpful, right? I don't think I could have pulled it off not being close in the beginning.
Hmm.
I think what changed is I found myself just kind of like a slave to my business where one thing would come up, it'd be real small. And I think, okay, well, I'll just go take care of this real quick. And then the next thing you know, like my whole week, I'm like building decks and skirting homes and picking up trash. And it was really hard for me to get the systems in place because
Yeah.
that took some time and effort. And once I decided, hey, I'm going to move away, I just started running things completely different. Even though I was 30 minutes away in some cases, I didn't go out there.
Yeah.
It was
Nice.
amazing to me how much better things were running, which was really to me a confidence boost. I was recognizable enough at the parks that there was a time at one of the parks where we do rent the homes, and this guy walks out to me and he says, hey, I got a leak in my house. I said, okay, did you call them? I mean, there's a huge sign that says, hey, maintenance request, call this number. There's a QR code, everything you could possibly need. And he says, no, I was just going to wait till I saw you. And I go in his house and his water just leaking for weeks, and it just destroyed it. And that to me was just like, this is crazy. Like, it seems nice in the beginning for tenants to be able to reach out and solve a problem quickly. But what happened is, even with a manager, they never asked her anything. They just bypassed her and tried to go straight to me. And I had to like cut out completely. So that the only choice was so they could talk to a manager who does a better job. Like
Yeah.
she knows the business better. She knows it way better than I do. She knows the tenants way better than I do. She's better at it than I am. So it was a growing some growing pains to get there, but it eventually worked out.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's one thing that irks me is with tenants when they know something needs to be fixed, and especially when it's something that causes more damage the longer it goes, like water leaks, and they know about it, and then they just, oh yeah, I was gonna wait for you. That just it's it's annoying, but yeah, I can see your frustration too when yeah they're just reaching out to you and not the manager, so it's gonna be tough. But things have gotten better now. You have your manager. And you have your maintenance person, right? Or you don't have the manager, you just have the maintenance person and a VA right now. Is that right?
Right. I used to, so our first kind of approach was an on-site manager at each park, which is basically just, talking to tenants that needed it, posting notices, and just sending us pictures. And it seems like it would work, but for whatever, it just always seemed like a recipe for drama. And it was kind of like the person who's the most like the soonest to like raise their hand and say, "Hey, I want to be the manager." They're the type who wants to like get rid of the neighbors that they just don't like, and they're totally fine. And so it was just always drama. We could never figure out what was really going on. At one point, I witnessed the manager walk into a home that was not ours. It was a tenant-owned home, and he just cut their water line and walked right out. And it was just like, oh my God. So we cut that out, right? I mean, the only thing we really need somebody on site for is to well, it used to be to post notices, but that we do that all through certified mail now. And to just to get an idea of how the park looks. But we use those Theta 360 cameras, and that has been even better than going there because we capture everything, even the small details, and we'll sit there for hours and nitpick like what needs to happen to make the place look better. So it's been pretty good.
That's your maintenance person walking through the park and with a 360 camera, and you capture everything, or how's that process work?
Yeah, he's got a camera, and usually he'll just stick it out his window of his truck, and he'll just drive through and snap a bunch of pictures, and we get it back on our end, and it's really cool. Like we just make a virtual tour of it real quick, or sometimes we just look at the pictures themselves, but we can go through those pictures and make notes of like if there's a house that's missing skirting, we'll put on there, hey, needs to skirt, and then we know next week we compare it. We say, hey, did this happen? No, it didn't happen. Okay, now we're going to ask a little less politely, and then it's okay. Now they need a fine, or now they need options on how to finance it, that sort of thing. So it's relatively simple, and anybody who owns a park, even if you have an on-site manager, I'd recommend doing it because it's a really good way to look back a few months and be like, this place is starting to fall apart, or like, hey, this is starting to look really, really good.
Yeah. What was the brand of that camera you were using?
Theta, Theta. They're pretty cheap. It's like, well, I say pretty cheap, but it's about like 300 per camera. You can get like a little pole. It's super easy to use. People just keep it right outside their car. They drive through, snap a bunch of pictures, and get it back to you. It's like, so now we use just like anything with mobile home parks. You think, oh, this will be easy, and then the people don't have a cell phone, and then the people don't have a way to send stuff to you. But now it's we use Google Photos, so they'll get home and upload all the pictures to Google Photos, and it just shows up right on our screen. We can go and look at everything.
So it's them going to Google Photos, they're uploading it to their computer and then putting it on Google Photos. So they've learned that process now.
Right, exactly. And it also helps a lot. Like if somebody moves out of a rent to own, I mean, you've still got to deal with it. That's still your house, right? And so it helps for us to be able to make a tour of it. And when we advertise the home, it's kind of hard if you don't have an on-site manager to schedule tours of the house with a bunch of people who, ultimately aren't going to buy it. So now it's a lot easier. Like, hey, they get that, and that weeds out. People know exactly what they're getting into, and so it's made that process easier too.
Yeah, that's great. That's something that we should start implementing too. I like that.
Get away.
Yeah, I mean, one to update like your investors, they can actual, get, if you're doing this weekly or quarterly or monthly, whatever it is, you can send that to your investors to update them on the progress of a park, like if you're infilling or, yeah, that's great. That's
and
awesome.
That part's really cool too, because they see it, right? I mean, most investors don't have an opportunity to ever see their investments. right?
Yeah.
It's S&P 500 or it's in a mutual fund. Like, what the heck is that, right? And then
Yeah.
you get into real estate and like they see a weekly update of like, hey, these two lots were just grass, and now there's two homes there. You can see it. Like you can
Hmm.
see that part has been really cool, and I think investors have really liked that aspect of it as well.
Nice. Any other cool ninja tricks that you're doing on the management side? Since I mean, you're running small, 8 parks, one VA, and yourself, and a maintenance person. That's pretty good. So yeah, you must have some other ninja tricks that are
Ooh.
helping.
So a big one has been AI. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
AI has been a huge component.
Love to hear this.
Um, in the beginning, it was just like it was just kind of like weird. I didn't really know what to use it for, and
Hmm.
I used it a lot for translations. Like I have a lot of Hispanic tenants.
Okay.
They'd get notices and they wouldn't know what's going on, right? And so this we started translating stuff that was super helpful. But the biggest thing I found is being able to customize GBTs. So at this point, like what we have is one GBT with our property management stuff, and it knows all the nuances of particular parks. So, one park might be on city water, one park might be on city water, but they don't have the same policy. Like one might be master metered, meaning from the master meter to the homes, we're responsible for.
Hmm.
One of them, it might go all the way up to the meters for the house. That's kind of hard to teach somebody all the nuances because your assistant's going to get a maintenance request, they're just going to handle it, right? So there's a ton of little stuff like that over time we've just taught it. And so I am now not the person that the manager's asking questions to. If it's like, hey, we've got like this situation's coming up, ask it. It says, hey, at this park, call this person, they'll do it. Or we get a lot of maintenance requests for tenant-owned homes. And we have to be like, hey, that's not hard, that's not a problem. So that's been super helpful. Just like in terms of like inbound leads we get, tons of people call wanting to rent a house.
Hmm.
And we don't rent houses anymore, right? So we try to, in the beginning, it's just probably 2 or 3 times a day somebody calling wanting to rent a home, and now it's a process of, hey, they just get a text being, just out of curiosity, what's your budget? And then this is all automated, and it's like, okay, well, if you're willing to spend that much on housing, do you know that you would qualify for, you could pay that much and own your own house and have it moved into our park, and here's a mobile home where you could go to. And it's kind of like upselling people, right? So
And what
that's
system is you doing that? Like, is that going through your CRM and with
it's
ChatGPT integrated into it?
I tried that,
Okay.
and the problem was it's not always perfect.
Yeah.
And so like at one point it would recognize, I have a park named Jones Mobile Home Park. I have another park where there's a lady there whose name is Laura Jones, and she's 80 years old, and she always says, hey, this is Miss Jones. And it always thought she was living at Jones, and it would send her applications, and it just didn't work. And then the post guy left us a voicemail saying like, hey, I'm over here at Jones Mobile Home Park. I'm trying to see if you could trim the trees because they keep hitting my truck as I'm putting in stuff in the mailbox. And it was sending him applications to Jones. So I turned the automation off because I just didn't
Yeah.
like the human not being able to be involved. But what it is like basically if we get a text from a tenant or a voicemail, we just copy and paste it from Ring Central. So it'll know the person's name, number, and this. And we have our rent rolls on our GBT. So they know what tenants live at what park.
Mm.
It just knows the context. It knows like, okay, this person is on a rent to own. So they may have they may have a maintenance problem, but you got to remember, remind them that that's what they agreed to. They're doing the maintenance. Or this person's got a septic problem. It knows to just add, it just basically the assistant just copy and paste, puts it in there, and she gets the result, which is fine. Like it doesn't take a lot of time to do that. And she's smart enough to spot differences of like, hey, this doesn't look right. Which is slowly happening less and less, but it's just a matter of like, I don't need to train somebody on the entire business to get going. Like somebody could
Yeah.
come in today and they're just back and forth, and it gives a great answer on like, hey, this is how you could do it.
So are
Um,
you uploading like all your SOPs,
and
your lease agreements,
you
and
can
all
also
that?
train it.
Oh, sorry, there was a lag there. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, so SOPs is a great one, right? Because one of the problems with that is when somebody has a question, are they going to read 40 pages to try to find the answer, or do they just ask it and it just spits out an answer? And I've seen the amount of questions I get dramatically go down from that. So that's been super helpful.
Nice. And that's just loading up stuff into, because we have the paid version ourselves. So we're more using it for contract review, some social media stuff. But you're saying you can upload this stuff, create a file specific to whatever park, and just train it based on the stuff you're uploading to that park.
Yeah. So like ours has the Alabama State Manufactured Housing Code. It has
Mm,
the landlord tenant laws. It knows all of that, and it doesn't reference the internet. It references what we give it. And so like we're confident that it's going to pull right from there. And I mean, it might make a mistake, but so do people, right? But it's just a really good way to make sure things are professional.
yeah.
Uh, Another good kind of hack, and I'm not going to name any names, but if there's people out there who put out a lot of good content about how to manage parks, transcribe all of it, put it on one big PDF, put it on your AI, and when you have a problem, it's gonna that's the source that it draws its knowledge from. So
Mm,
if you have one of the best operators making the decisions at how you manage stuff, right? It's really,
yeah.
really cool stuff. So I've been diving into it really, really deep, and it's the amount, like for the short amount of time you put into it, it quickly makes a huge difference in how things get done.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been trying to we were actually just messing around with this last night on making some changes to our underwriting, financial modeling and stuff like that. And it didn't quite hit the mark, but you know,
It'll get there. It'll get there soon. That's the part that freaks me out. Like
yeah,
I remember 18 months ago just messing around with it and just having it write like ridiculous like things in different famous people's like style. But now it's incredible
yeah,
what it can do. And it's just that growth in that amount of time makes me think like, man, this is really gonna happen fast.
yeah. And supposedly GPT 5.0 coming out soon is supposed to be chaotic. So that'll be interesting. I mean, it is interesting some of the images it puts out too. Like we've been trying lately for like even the YouTube channel been throwing in like, hey, take this transcript and create a YouTube thumbnail on this, and it's interesting what it pops up with. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good because it can just be super professional, super easy to understand. Translations, like I said, we used to have a huge issue. I used to have somebody on staff who was bilingual to be able to talk to some of the tenants. Now it's not a problem. They text, we're going back and forth, just putting the text in there, putting it back. I mean, you could use Google Translate, but it's not that great. Uh,
Hmm.
Whereas this can figure it out, right? There's just, to me, I think if you're going to be in like the small and medium sized parks, right, management's going to be your biggest headache. And I think with this technology coming out, it's taking out a lot of that headache. And
Yeah,
I think it's going to make them more passive investments. And I think it's going to make them more attractive to people down the line if they're already running on that kind of stuff. I mean, people think of trailer park, the last thing they think is AI, but
technology. Yep.
every business can benefit from it.
Yep.
That's gold. I like the fact to
Yeah.
train it up, to give it all that knowledge, and now you can have a VA instead of contacting you, it'll just ask that, and at least there's some type of human element, like you said. If there's like the address, the VA will know that this person's talking about the address or something, they'll know the context of it, and the fact that they can go in there and copy and paste. You're right, that could open up a lot of doors because it makes these VAs that are paid whatever they're $5 to $10 an hour now worth somebody who's probably worth $20 or $30 an hour given their knowledge set.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's awesome. And the one thing I would say to that is if you've managed a mobile home park for more than a month, you know that there will always be things that come up that you have no idea how to prepare for because there's just crazy questions, crazy like all these sorts of like I had a tenant who was like convinced like the government was honing satellites on his property, and we're like, I can't have an SOP lengthy enough to like have a response for that, right? Uh, so it's just a matter of just like, hey, we're gonna do as good as we can. But it really does do a professional job, and it makes it makes sure that like I know like I can rest peacefully knowing that like, hey, we're probably being really, really consistent in our answers. Like there's no way we can't be. Uh,
Hmm.
it spits out what we tell it to spit out. When somebody asks about rent, It's very polite. It explains like what we can do to help them. It's this, it's that. It's not just, me getting a text and being like, dang it, this guy again, getting short with
Mhm.
them. Never happens. It's really, really professional, consistent. So, and I don't think that, I mean, to me, I think the tenants appreciate it more too, because we can get them responses quicker, much, much quicker.
Yeah, nice. So it sounds like a text comes in through your Grasshopper line, and then your VA is grabbing it and throwing it into ChatGPT to respond, and then
Yeah,
copies and pastes that back into the text. Yeah.
right.
So
Yeah.
your VA is always just on their computer, seeing messages come in and out and replying to all that stuff. Is that basically what your VA is doing for your business?
Not, I mean, yes, but basically, it's pretty, we don't do it all the time, but it's like once every 24 hours. And that's the part that's easy. It's like copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And it just happens very quickly. Even though VAs don't charge a ton per hour, like it's still, everything should be efficient in a business.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a kind of a matter of like, hey, every 24 hours we're getting back to people, which in a mobile home park, I mean, that's really, if you're doing it right, if you have any maintenance requests, they're usually not an emergency. They're septic, or they're, hey, the road's starting to do this, or this neighbor's leaving this stuff out. You don't have water heaters, you don't have stuff like that you need to immediately get on.
Yeah. And now that you're remote, and no one's actually, do you have a park manager for each park or no?
Not anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, not anymore.
So then you're operating everything, running everything remote. How is the payment collection? What kind of systems are you using? What's that look like for you guys?
We use Yardi, and every month that goes by, I contemplate that. It's not easy to use. Uh,
Mhm.
but tenants at this point they have a program called CheckScan, which I have to say is absolutely phenomenal. It's just a PO box in Austin, Texas, that tenants mail their money orders or checks to, and it just shows up on our Yardi. We see the check, we hit approve, and it's in our system like that. Um, that's been huge. I mean, rent, obviously tenants can pay online if they want to. And the one thing I've learned about mobile home parks is the complicated solutions are really easy. It's the hard solutions where like, hey, this guy can't text, or this person can't read, or this person doesn't have a bank account. That's
Mhm.
the stuff where like those are the kind of systems where it's like nothing today is really set up to work on that. And so you have to learn to get efficient at making it work for the tenants.
Yeah. Yep. That's a tough part, trying to figure that out. I mean, ideally, yes, you want everything ACH and, you know, simple pay first of the month, automatic withdraw, but that's
Yeah,
hardly the case.
wish.
Are you guys using any type of like security cameras at these parks too to have like live views?
We did for a while. When
Hmm.
we were doing a lot more of the renovations, um, it was more important to have them at the time. Most of the parks have like one or two cameras just to like catch any traffic going in or out in case anything ever came up.
Yeah.
We used to have a lot more up, but to be honest, like it's kind of hard to get good cameras up at a property because you don't have Wi-Fi, and I haven't at least found a really good way to get Wi-Fi. Um, and so we use those cellular cameras and they work. But then if they're unconnected for whatever reason, you gotta send somebody out there to reconnect them. Like there's that, so that part I just kind of gave up on it. I'm not a huge fan of them, but they're
Yeah.
up there and they're recording. So if anything ever happened, we can go get it if we needed to.
Yeah.
So I used the Real Link cameras for a while.
Yeah.
Uh, and even that, it kind of was like tenants used to say, hey, pull up the cameras from blah, 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 so and so. I know they stole my whatever. And we look it up. It's like nothing happened. Like it just was another source of drama. It just blew my mind of like, okay, well, let's just go back to not having them. Um,
Yeah.
Most of our tenants are trained now. Like if they send us an issue of a picture, we'll get on it right away. And so I feel like that's kind of removed that need. Pretty much all the tenants know to look out for stuff.
Yeah. Nice. Very cool. So what's been your biggest challenge so far uh with the 8 parks that you own?
Um, Financing was toughest to get them done, right?
Mm.
I had the worst case scenario I had a bank back out the day before closing.
Oh
And
gosh.
that like that was bad enough, but we ended up getting it closed. But like since then, I've just been so uh so nervous every time we're under contract. Nothing a banker can say can make me feel confident anymore. And a few of them I've apologized to. It's like, hey, I'm sorry if I'm asking all these questions, but like I need this. I need to know we're doing this.
Yeah.
But that was definitely the toughest thing, and that led to an even tougher situation where that park at the time was on weekly rentals, right? It was it's some weird,
Weekly. Nice.
and it was, I mean, obviously the tenants stay there for like 10 plus years. I don't think anybody on the rent roll had been there shorter than that. But
Yeah.
that's how the owner owned a laundromat right next to it. It was easy for him to do that. It was mostly cash. So obviously IRS doesn't know anything that's going on there. Uh,
Hmm.
but it was, I mean, obviously we just couldn't do that too. Like he's close. We're not gonna be able to do that. And 2 weeks prior to the closing, he's a super awesome guy, like really, really cool guy. And he's asking me how we're going to transition people. And we had a plan to phase it in. And he just said, what if I just don't charge in the next 2 weeks? Right. And you just come in and then they'll have 2 weeks saved up. So we said, sure. Well, that was the property that the bank backed out of. So now
Uh,
I can't blame the bank for backing out of it, but I just wish they would have said no way earlier than yes and getting through all the final approvals to like having all the stuff for title and then it's just not happening. But the guy had gone around and told all the tenants they're not paying until this closes. It didn't close for another 3 months. So, there was a lot of park on homes, and when we hadn't even got out there yet. Like he went by the final day to like let them all know that it did sell. I know he didn't say anything bad. He's just a super nice guy. Told them all they moved. Well, what happened? These people who are paycheck to paycheck for their whole life finally had 3 months rent. So they moved. They got a house. They shared a rental house together, and it just
mm,
what like of the 20 homes that were there, 7 people moved out. And like
Jeez.
just not prepared for that. Like you
yeah.
can't have a plan for that. And we did figure it out, but it's just that has been the toughest problem. And that was like the first experience when I mentioned earlier, like within weeks of Parkland Homes, I was like, hey, this is not my thing. That was it. That was the situation where I was like, look, the the economics of mobile home parks that make them great are thrown out the window as soon as you're renting the home. And it's a completely different animal. So that part has been the toughest part.
Yeah, that's interesting. And those are just like the one-off stories, you don't hear about or don't realize. Like, yeah, keep collecting all the way to the very end, because if the lender pulls the last statement, financial statement or P&L, and it shows now no collection of rent, well, shoot. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's gonna be a big
exactly.
issue.
Is that and there's to me it was just it's hard to predict something like that could happen. And
Yeah.
at the time it just seemed like, hey, this is perfect. The tenants will have their money. We can just go right to monthly. That's way easier. Because the hardest thing at a mobile home park is getting people to have good habits. And so this was a good way we could do that. And it just yes. The other story was it's much shorter, but there was a day that the local Home Depot called me and like congratulated me. I was like, why are you congratulating? Like, oh, you're the third highest spender in our store in the last 2 months. It's like, oh no, I'm not in the flipping business. You should not be calling me, telling me I'm the biggest spender there. So that was another like final straw of like, okay, we've got it. But what we have found super, super successful when we will infill with used homes now, but we'll just sell the home as is to somebody who's got the experience and the handyman skills to fix it up themselves. And
Yeah.
that has been phenomenal. Like it's a lot less cash. It's like less than 5 grand, and you can just fill up a lot like that. And you get a tenant who is hardworking, has good skills. They usually got a really good paying job, and they're free and clear on their house afterwards, right? Which is another hidden advantage to that. Like I've had 21st rip homes out of parks because the tenants stopped paying them, right? And that does happen. And when somebody's free and clear, like, hey, this is their home for a long, long time.
Yeah. Wow. Jeez. So, any other assets you're investing in, or is it strictly mobile home parks? Are you looking at other stuff at this point?
Strictly mobile home parks.
Okay.
I think just on a personal note, I eventually want to get into something where like something is there that wasn't when I started, which is like I really want to gravitate towards development, not of
Mm-hmm.
development of mobile home parks, but just development is like a totally different thing.
Mhm.
Uh, but I feel like I mean, you guys probably feel the same way. Like the mobile home park market, it's been a great opportunity. It's still a great opportunity, but it's not going to be for much longer. Um, because these really fantastic, like slam dunk home run deals are getting bought up. And eventually it'll just become like any other asset class where you eke out decent returns and you got to sell every 5 years, which I'm just once it's to the point where it's like the same as something else, that's when I think I'll change. But for now, it's relatively easy to find great deals even in today's market, and so this is what I'm going to stick with for a long time, or at least for the time being.
Yeah. Yeah. We were actually just having that discussion the other day about, how long do we see the mobile home park market being viable to pick up good deals? And as more and more people are entering the space, and, as you mentioned, the slam dunk big deals are getting picked up by these bigger operators or funds and stuff like that. It's going to get tougher, and it's a diminishing asset class. They're not building more. So it's all going to be picked up and owned by, bigger institutions at that point. So
Yeah.
what's
I
the
still think it's fantastic for the industry though. Like
oh yeah, yeah.
so many like mom and pops, they're not good for the industry. Like they just aren't. Like they just give it a bad name, uh,
Hmm.
and they set people's standards that like, hey, I want the cheapest thing available, and they attract really bad people. And affordable
Yep.
housing is in such high demand. Like it's to me, it's like the best option out there for people, other than buying a mobile home, putting it on your own land. If you can't do that, a park is definitely your most affordable option. And
Yeah.
so I think it's good for that. It's also good for us investors because as more buyers, come along that are willing to buy it, it's a higher price when you sell it. So it's
Yep.
it's
Yeah, I
it's
100% agree with that statement. Like mom and pops that don't put in the maintenance or repair the parks and just let the communities go downhill where it's not safe or enjoyable for people to live in. Yeah, that's putting a bad name for operators that are really trying to turn around these parks and make them nice, safe, and clean communities. And the other thing I was thinking about too is like if more bigger operators are starting to uh, purchase and manage these parks. And as the parks get better and the communities start growing and the city starts seeing this, maybe there's opportunities to start building more ground up mobile home park or manufactured home communities, right? And because it is one of the, as you mentioned, it's one of the only affordable housing options where you can still own. There's affordable housing options, but you're always a renter. And
Yep.
so where you can actually own, and in today's world, even owning a manufactured home still is going to appreciate. And so in 5, 10 years, you can sell it and make a profit. And that's creating wealth, basically.
Yeah, and I see a ton of to me, like when I look at how expensive just an average stick built single family home is, it's completely unaffordable for most people.
Yeah.
Like and I think there's going to be more people who look at mobile home parks and they're going to look at the nice ones. They're not going to move into the trailer parks,
Hmm.
move into the mobile home parks.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be good for the industry too, right? Because we're going to get a new, like more people in there, which is going to improve them and improve the lives of tenants too. So I think it's a good time to be. It's tough, right? Like it's definitely tough. Like I mean, 2 years ago you could throw a rock and probably find a deal and get it closed and it made sense. And you got to really work for it now. But I think that's good. I think like from the sellers I talked to, they don't get called like they used to. And I think that's just going to lead towards more of them wanting to be creative, more of them being willing to negotiate. And I've also heard of like some of the groups that I know are starting to buy parks. I think they're buy box. They're looking at smaller and smaller and smaller parks, uh,
Hmm.
which is good. I mean, there's some where I heard of them buying it. I'm like, man, if I would have sent that to them 2 years ago, they'd have laughed at me. I can't believe they're
Yeah.
buying that. But they buy everything in a market. Their companies set up to own mobile home parks. There's nothing else they can do. They're gonna that's the way the industry is gonna go eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you own in a certain geographical area, why not pick up everything that's in that? Right.
Yeah.
It helps also control how your other parks do too. And it's all about economy of scale. So that, yeah, completely makes sense. But yeah, and all the 100, 200, 300 space parks are, I mean, those are swooped up already. So you can't,
It, it,
can't get your
it
hands
used
on
to
those.
drive me nuts when I would be a broker and somebody's never bought a park before and they're calling like, hey, I'm looking at getting the mobile home parks. I want 100 plus lots, major city, city water, city sewer. I'm like, you and everybody else. Like there are people with billions who are looking for what you want. Like that's not going to happen. I mean, it will happen. It can happen, but like at this point, those kind of deals are getting hairier and hairier because the ones that are still out there have something wrong with them. So it's the time to be cautious, but also creative, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
And what you said is incredibly smart. It's the more units you have in a geographical territory, now you can sell your portfolio where they maybe wouldn't have bought one or two of your, like one or two or three, but now that you have 250 units and growing in a certain area, now it opens you up to all different type of money coming to buy out your portfolio at a much better evaluation. So that is
Right.
even when you talk about any park that we get, now it's like, okay, now we have a pocket that it's more valuable to us to get more parks in this area.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like Monopoly. Everybody's played Monopoly, you know, you get all the boards, it gets a lot easier.
Yep, exactly. Well, Jeff, it's been we're approaching about an hour here. Appreciate you coming on the show. How can people get in touch with you, and what are you looking for? Like if they have find deals and they can send you.
Yeah, I'm creative. I'll look at any kind of deal in terms of that. I'm not going to say yes to every deal, but I will definitely look at everyone and I will definitely think through it as best I can. But LinkedIn is probably the best way. Jeff Flynn, you can find me on LinkedIn. I try to stay pretty active. Got a website coming online pretty soon, not quite yet, but that'll be aspenridge.capital. So depending on
Nice.
when you hear this, they might be able to check that out and go there. But yeah, that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Cool. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all the knowledge. I love the AI talk. That's something that both Ben and I have really been trying to figure out, all right, in our business, and talking to people that are actually using it that is exciting to me. You know, I geek out on that stuff. So
Yeah,
appreciate you coming on the show and sharing everything you got.
absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.
All right,
Awesome.
man. You have a good one.
Thank you. You too.